The first question comes from Nervous in New Hudson. We always have such great alliteration and titles for the people who write in. So Nervous in New Hudson writes in and says, I am purchasing a small building, and during the process, I have signed an agreement with the seller. I just learned from the title work that the proposed seller is not actually the owner. He has an option to purchase the property, and his option has expired. He never actually bought the property. With the title company's help, I reached out to the real owner of the property. He says that I can buy it through him. The first seller says he is going to sue me if I do not honor the purchase agreement. What do you think? From Nervous in New Hudson. This one's kind of juicy. I'm
Yeah, there's a
excited to
lot
hear the
going on there.
answer.
I mean, there's a lot of lessons there, right? I mean, the first thing is just real briefly is if you're buying real estate, always get your title search, get a title commitment from a title company, because that actually is really important, especially in this situation. Well, I mean, if it can be verified that the option had expired. I mean, me, I'm going to always say I'd like to see the documents, but if it truly is expired and the current seller who is buying on option can't verify that he purchased, the property or still has that option as a valid option, then he has no rights to the property and he shouldn't be selling the property.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple other issues in here. I mean, my goodness, talk about a rabbit hole. But so a title company is going to want to see, of course, the documents related to the option. And then the other thing is really important is with regards to the initial seller, the person who actually owns the property, could there be litigation between the buyer of the option and the original seller? So we have to find that out. So we do a litigation search. And so long as the title company is aware that there's something going out there, on outside of just a purchase agreement, that there's this option floating around, real estate options should really be recorded with the county where the property sits, right? The situation, the subject property that concerns this transaction, the option needs to be recorded in the county in which it sits so that the title company can see if it's valid or not, meaning if it's recorded. It really, the recording itself doesn't verify the legality of that document. It just would be very helpful. So, if the title company is aware of it, we'd want to see the document and let the title company decide if they're willing to insure this transaction, okay, between the original seller and this buyer, cutting out the seller who is purchasing under option, for lack of a better term.
Okay.
And it might be a little bit confusing, but we got to cut that person out. So the one thing is that document, that purchase agreement, based on the question the facts that you've given us, there's no purchase agreement. That person it's not valid. You can't sell what you do not own. Okay. Right. So, I mean, that purchase agreement I would set to the side, except if there's any controversy between the seller under the purchase agreement and the original seller, it's going to have to be resolved. It can't move forward. Okay. Because there's going to be litigation. All right. So, it sounds like there's a little bit more work to do there. I wouldn't rush to a closing at this point.
Okay. So there's still hope for him or her to purchase the property through the original owner of the property, if they can, of course, work out a deal. But this secondary middle person who had purchased the option to buy, if their option had actually expired, then they have no interest in the property.
What I would do is I would create or generate a release, okay, a mutual release between the purchaser under option and the original seller, okay? I would want to see a release so that there's no questions as to who owns the property and who's, and the buyer able to proceed, right? That's the most important. They need to know that they can proceed without any events of future litigation or threats of litigation. And I can share with you, the title company is going to feel the same way. title company is not going to want to let this deal go through
Of
till they
course.
know who has the rights to this property.
Mhm.
On paper, it's the original seller. That's again why we want to have title work. But if there's any chance of litigation out there, I can assure you most title companies will not take that risk. They want it cleaned up. They do not want to buy them. They don't want to buy themselves a lawsuit, for lack of a better expression. Okay.
So this connects to to me personally. So we have a tenant in a property. We are
Mhm.
selling that property to the tenant on an option to buy. They purchased the option. They've fulfilled everything that they need to fulfill. Now in the language of that lease option, I recall that it says that tenant buyer does not have the authority to lease the property, so they can't purchase it from me on the option to buy and then put someone else in there.
That's a non-assignability
Right.
provision,
But
right?
while they are still in this this lease option period, they have
Uh,
X number of months to fulfill. Could they sell the property? Like, could they sell what is right now my property with
You would
their
make
lease
the
option?
option, right? So that's an assignability clause. You would
Mhm.
make, you would, by the way, in a really good market in a seller's market,
Mhm.
you may not want that option to be assignable.
Sure.
Okay. But if you don't put a provision in the option that prevents assignability, then it's assignable. Like if you don't address it
Okay.
and specifically address it, there's nothing further that you could do against, this tenant who has the option.
Mhm.
But let's say in a market that's kind of, where it's really busy right now, you want to collect your option money.
Yep.
And if that person can't fulfill their agreement, they've lost the money.
Mhm.
That's it, fair and
Mhm.
square. But let's say it's a buyer's market, which for many years it was. What do you care who is paying you off, right?
Right.
Whether it's the person who has the right to purchase, or they assign it out to somebody else. Who
Mhm.
cares? Just get rid of it.
Sure.
So,
Sure. No, that just made me think of my own scenario of,
oh, sure.
I certainly didn't want the tenants to lease it to anyone else, for a number of reasons people can, think of that on their own selves, but I never thought about my tenants potentially trying to sell the property. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So,
Oh, sure.
okay.
Right.
So potentially this person in this question could have sold the property if there were not the assignability clause in the original
Well, in the
option
big
of purchase.
issue, right, the big issue in that question is that the option expired.
Hmm.
So that individual never had any rights to sell to the buyer in
Regardless.
that,
Okay.
regardless. And now, if it was under option, right, if that option was still valid, I would, if they came to me, we'd reach out to the original seller, right, the person who
Hmm.
is actually selling to the purchase agreement seller on option, that middle person.
Hmm.
We'd reach out and go, hey, is this option still valid? And we'd want all parties to be aware that there's this transaction going on and that the buyer needs to know where to send the money, honestly, right?
Yep.
Because you got to be really careful. There's a lot of, again, another item, there's a lot of fraud, real estate fraud.
Yes.
So this person is very fortunate that they ordered the title work. They're also probably, they should have an attorney, of course, do their commercial real estate deal because that's what it sounds like. And they shouldn't be doing it on their own.
Hmm.
And this is a perfect example of the stuff that let me tell you, there's so many things that can go wrong, right? I'm a trained cynic, as they say, but there are. And that's what makes attorneys busy every day when it comes to real estate. Good
Yep.
times or bad times. So very good.
All right. That was very good from Nervous in New Hudson.